This is Debrief, brought to you by the Australian Industry Group.
Welcome to Debrief, the podcast that explains industry to policymakers and government policy to industry, and is driven by the Australian Industry Group's mission, which is to empower industry success for a better Australia. My name is Louise McGrath, Head of Industry Development and Policy at the Australian Industry Group. This week, I'm joined by Simon Terry, Chief Executive of Dux, manufacturer of hot water systems. But before we start our conversation with Simon, let me explain the context for the conversation. For almost 2 years, we've been working with the National AI Centre as part of the Department of Industry to deliver workshops around the country to demonstrate various kinds of artificial intelligence use cases. And as part of that project, we've selected 6 members to be case studies for successful adopting of AI in a responsible and effective way. And Dux and Simon is one of those case studies. So welcome, Simon.
Thank you, Louise. It's a great honour to be here today. Thank you for inviting me.
So before we get into the AI conversation, do you want to tell us a little bit about Dux? I mean, I'm sure a lot of people listening will have your equipment in their homes, but how long have you been in Australia and what do you do in the Australian market?
So we've been making water heaters in Australia for 110 years. So 110 years this year. We've made over 12 million water heaters in that time, and there's not 12 million houses in Australia. So odds on you have had a Dux water heater in your house. We make them in the New South Wales Southern Highlands down at Moss Vale, and we've got 180 people in our company.
Fantastic. And so thinking about those 180 people, I'm sure you're always thinking, how do I keep those 180 jobs in Australia? What made you decide on AI? And what was the use case that you found, was right for you?
So we, in terms of our AI journey, the problem that we sort of ran into, Louise, was we make all these water heaters. We need to give them after sales support, and for us, we make them in Australia, but we sell them in New Zealand, and we sell them obviously all throughout Australia. So that encompasses 5 time zones every day. So we've got to start in New Zealand, a New Zealand wake-up call. Somebody might turn on the tap at 6 a.m. in the morning, New Zealand time, and not have hot water, to a WA close. So it's a huge spread of hours for us, and we can't get humans to fill those hours. We always say, the internal joke within our business for the last 10 years is the next person that leaves our customer service team, we're going to get someone to start at 5 a.m. No one has left. So we've just got this huge thing going on in terms of an in-joke that no one ever leaves, the customer service. And we say it is the toughest job in the business, customer service, because you actually pick up the phone to someone in the morning who may have had no hot water that morning. They're irrational. They can be crazy. So it is a very, very tough call.
Yeah.
It takes a certain type of person to answer that call every day.
And I guess it's a very technical call as well, because, as far as your customer is concerned, as you say, turn on the tap, no hot water, but you've got all sorts of different models, different settings. Some of it you might be able to fix yourself. Sometimes you'll need to get a repairman in. How do you train people to do all that?
Yeah, it's very complex, as you said. So we've got the full range. So we've got electric storage water heaters, gas storage water heaters, gas continuous flow. We've got heat pumps. We've got solar, we've got commercial water heaters. So they need to be across all of that. And as you said, it's very, very complex, and only licensed tradespeople are able to work on water heaters. So we've sort of got to triage the situation, and we developed what we call internally a scriptinator about 15 years ago. And that's where we basically made a decision tree, and all the things that could possibly go wrong with the water heater, we've been fine-tuning that over the last 15 years. And we can take customers through the decision tree to actually say, hey, you don't have any gas in your LPG bottle, or you flicked off with the power board, or whatever it might be.
And so your AI decision was to use Agentic AI, which is really quite a new cutting edge style of AI. A lot of people will be familiar with ChatGPT, etc., but Agentic AI has much more agency, doesn't it?
I stumbled into this, Louise, and let me tell you, it's a funny story. And I only became aware of this in April this year. I was sitting down, it was a Saturday night with my wife out the back, and our son said, Dad, we've got to go. We're going out for dinner now. See you later. And I said, mate, where are you going? He said, we're going. 6 people aren't coming now. There's only 4 of us going. I said, did you give the restaurant a call and let them know it's no longer for 6, it's for 4, so they could sell those 2 other seats. He said, no, I haven't. And he said, I've got to go right now. And he's a P-plater, so he can't connect his phone to Bluetooth. So he said, Dad, would you mind calling? And I said, sure. And I gave them a call and quickly changed the details seamlessly. But I noticed in the background, this keyboard was just going the whole time like this. Even when I wasn't talking, the keyboard was going. I thought, I've just spoken to an Agentive AI person here. So I went to work on the Monday, went down to see the very clever engineers that we have down at Mossvale, and I said, I think I have the solution to that span of hours problem we have. We've got the scripts, these decision trees. All we need now is the operator that's prepared to work 24/7, that's prepared to work outside of hours. And it's happened really, really quickly, and we are thrilled with the results.
And so what are those results? How quickly do they make the call? Can they resolve them? Do they have the same accuracy as your human callers?
They are trained to a product trainer standard. They're actually to an engineer's level. They don't make mistakes. Humans occasionally make mistakes. These people don't make mistakes. The Agentive AIs, we've given them all personalities. And they're unique in terms of we spent a lot of time sandboxing and developing the characters, because what we don't want to have, what we discovered in the training, is that they hallucinate.
Mm.
Their task is to solve your problem. So they were going outside of our environment onto the internet and searching and saying, well, somebody put up on YouTube 5 years ago that if you hit this thing with a 4x2 in the side, it'll come good. And you think, you really don't want that happening. So we actually had to put some guardrails in and say, okay, you're a specialist in this sandbox. You're not allowed to go out of this sandbox. And the guardrails are, you can only take information from our database. So we had to put up these safety guardrails to make sure, to be certain that they didn't start hallucinating.
And how long was that process, sort of from that Monday you walked in to when you hit live?
I'd say it was 6 months.
Okay.
We've probably gone live late September, early October. We've taken about 400 calls now, a bit over 300 calls, and we're solving 75% of them over the phone. So we're resolving, and it could be you don't have LPG, your switchboard's gone, whatever it is. Funnily enough, though, the average call time between the Agentive AI operator and the human is within 10 seconds.
Really?
So the average call time is like 3 minutes and 12 seconds and 3 minutes and 5 seconds. So very, very close. But we transcribe everything. We listen to it. We're training the operators every day. They have not made a mistake yet.
And what about that sort of sense of, as you say, talking to a robot? Like some people are worried that service feels a little less personal. Do the customers know that they're speaking to Agentic AI? Do you declare that up front?
We're very upfront in this first or second sentence. We say, just let you know, I'm not a human. I'm an Agentive AI operator. It's Jess. So you first of all go to Jess, and she's our sort of triage, and she has an important role. She needs to find out your model number and your serial number. So we know what sandbox you fit in, but also when your product was made. So we know all the components within that. So she has to get those, and then she will pass you straight off. And she says, I am an Agentive AI. Just let you know, I'm not a human. I'm an AI. However, when we listen to the recordings, so many people just completely ignore it, and they think they're having a human conversation because we have made them very human-like. I went to go and see the engineers a week ago and said, Jess just said to me. And they said, well, you say I say all the time. I'm not a robot. Well, you say we've tried to make her human-like. She is mimicking human behavior.
And I know people are calling very stressed, as you say, but if they did tell Jess a joke, do you think she would laugh?
She has got a bit of spunk, actually, because she transfers you to Maya, who's the electric storage. And the other day I called her Maya, and she goes, Simon, just want to let you know my name is Maya, not Maya, but if it makes you happy, call it. Yeah. She's actually got a bit of spunk. And they detect empathy. It is incredible. They see the emotion. If the call is going particularly well, they now text somebody a Google link where you can actually put up a bit of a review. So they actually are listening to the emotion in the call and making responses accordingly. They can text you information.
Fantastic. And how about your human team? How are they experiencing this agentic AI? What do they feel about it?
Very, very supportive. I must tell you the story. So we communicated very early. This is what we're doing. We see this as helping you, not taking your job. We see this as something that's going to help you outside of hours. Very, very quickly, they became awake to, does that mean I won't have to work on Melbourne Cup Day anymore? Well, ultimately, yes, it does. Does that mean that I'll be able to have a holiday in winter? Because one of our operators for 18 years, that's our peak period. We don't have holidays in winter. I said, I've never had a winter holiday. She's worked here 18 years, the poor thing. She's never had a winter holiday. She said, will I be able to go? Yes, you will. Does that mean I won't have to work Saturdays? Yes, that's correct. They're very, very supportive.
Fantastic. Well, especially when you can show some really, as you say, positive personal benefits for them and not threatening their jobs.
I was very clear. Whilst this won't be taking your job, I want to be very upfront. We are probably not going to be putting on any more customer service operators. We had this 10-year dream that we're going to put someone on 5 o'clock. Now, Jess and Maya, they'll be on the phones at 5 o'clock. You'll be sleeping in, which is where we want you to be. But your job is not at risk, but we certainly won't be putting on any new jobs in customer service.
Yeah.
And they appreciate it.
Yeah.
And they could understand.
And I think, as with every new technology, it's not destroying jobs of the day, but it's just that iterative process that, as you say, jobs aren't always needed forever. And
Australia is really lagging the world in this. Like you look at it and you see the US, they're just so far in front, and China and India, even Brazil. And Australia is really only using this to transcribe meetings. And there's just so much more that we can be doing in this space that we need to do. It is the great productivity enabler that Australia has been missing for the last decade. And I can really see where this is going to save us a lot of time.
Well, I think some of the hesitation from some companies, I agree with you. I think companies are being too slow and that there are laggards. But I think some of the hesitation is that data quality. Sounds like you've already done that homework in that decision tree. So you could go to the agentic AI with very, very clear instructions.
That's why it was quite quick for us. And as you say, data scientists, 6 months ago, I didn't know what a data scientist was. We've hired a data scientist. So we haven't lost jobs. We've actually put on jobs. We've got a data scientist, a data transition person, a business analyst. We've put on 3 jobs and we're looking for 4 just because of this project, because we can see it is going to transform our business.
And what about cybersecurity? Because that's the other concern from a lot of companies.
Yeah, we've got very strong controls on that. It's all, I probably don't want to go into it too much on the podcast just to reveal any vulnerabilities, but I had exactly those same concerns. And, we've partnered with one of the biggest firms in the US. The protection levels they've got are significantly above the protections we have in our own business. So in terms of vulnerability, there's probably always some vulnerability. Any type of personal data, we have a rule within our business. If we have to keep personal data for more than 7 days, it's encrypted. If we don't need it, we delete it straight away. So those same rules apply.
Now, the Australian population, around 30% don't have English as their first language. I mean, it must be tempting to think, what next? Are you looking at multilingual support? Are you sort of looking to expand your existing service?
Let me tell you a funny story. So I've got to go to Japan in 2 weeks' time to present this. And they are multilingual right now, the robots or the agents, I should say. And we were talking to my Japanese translator about how we're going to present this to the Japanese audience. And we thought that I would start in English and then he would start talking in Japanese. And we did that. And Jess seamlessly picked up that we're now talking Japanese and started responding in Japanese. However, the Japanese, their word for yes is hi. And at the end of every sentence, he was going, hi, hi. Jess thinks he's jumped back to English and is talking hi as in English and started talking in English again. So I think there's a little way to go in terms of training for multilingual, but I think that is a huge enabler. If you want to talk in Arabic, if you want to talk in French, if you want to talk in Vietnamese, that's your preferred language, you can do it now. It is a little bit slower, but I think that will sort of improve over time.
Yeah.
But that's a huge benefit.
Right. Well, thanks very much, Simon. So if there's one message to policymakers when it comes to AI, because, there's a lot of concern around our companies using it safely and responsibly, and should it be regulated, all sorts of guardrails, what would be your message to policymakers?
I think the Productivity Commission said it well in terms of this is their third pillar of the big five pillars, that regulation of AI should be a last resort. The things that we're using it for, they're not sensitive. I think where things are sensitive, and I'm talking about character AI and relationships and things like that, aged care, that's where I think there needs to be some guardrails. Simple customer service logistics, I don't think it needs to be any guardrails.
Yeah. So it sounds like, in industries that are already heavily regulated, then this is just similarly regulated. But as you say, your call center wasn't regulated before, so there's probably no need to regulate it now.
100%. And I don't know whether you've seen it, Louise, but Microsoft put in their submission to the Productivity Commission. They said Australia needs to get into this. There's $115 billion worth of GDP and 200,000 jobs that can be created in Australia. We need to be putting the foot down on this.
Yeah.
Rather than sort of hiding under the bed and say, AI is going to take my job. I think we just need to go full steam ahead.
That's right.
Where appropriate.
Yeah, exactly. Appropriate and responsibly executed. Ines, our boss, often says employees shouldn't be fearful of AI taking their jobs. They should be fearful that their company doesn't use AI, the company doesn't survive, and they ultimately lose their job.
100%, I agree with that.
All right. Well, thanks very much, Simon. And we'll hear from you at the press club as well when we launch our report. Thanks.
Thank you. Bye, Louise.
Bye.
You're listening to the Debrief podcast, brought to you by the Australian Industry Group. To find out more about how Australian Industry Group can help your business, visit australianindustry.group.com.au. And
welcome back. You're listening to Debrief, our podcast from the Australian Industry Group. And this week's edition, we're talking to some of our case studies for our artificial intelligence report. And so I'm joined now by Shami Francis, Manager of Innovation at InfraBuild. Welcome, Shami.
Thank you. Wonderful being here this morning.
Now, Shami, a lot of people will know who InfraBuild is, but for those who don't, just tell us a bit about the history of the company.
Yeah, thank you. So InfraBuild is a key part of Australia's manufacturing industry. We're the only electric arc furnace-based steelmaker in the nation, and we're the lowest carbon-intensive steel producer also in the nation. We're an interesting organisation in that we're vertically integrated. So our steelmaking actually commences with our recycling business, providing the most valuable resource in our steelmaking, which is scrap steel. That is then supplied to our steelmaking facilities that convert that scrap into semi-finished goods known as billets through one of two electric arc furnaces, one in Sydney at Rooty Hill and one in Melbourne at Leverton. And that product is then transformed into finished goods at our rolling mills. We've got 10 rolling mills across the nation, ranging from rod bar mills and wire mills through to tube mills. Those products are then sold to the open market to support the construction sector. So we're transforming our traditionally high emission industry, and we're leading a decarbonised future, really on the back of innovation, technology, some sustainability principles, and over a century of local manufacturing heritage. We're using AI to augment and support the ability of our people to make informed decisions. And really our focus is on enhancing sustainability, improving traceability.
And I've been out to the site in Leverton and to the furnace, and it is like the heat of 1,000 suns. It's quite intense, but it's also, you can see all the way through all these sort of elements of innovation and, as you say, recycling and reducing the carbon footprint. In the our case study, the particular project that you focus on is your bundle tagging machine project. Talk a bit about that.
Yeah, so a key part of our delivery to market is actually the traceability elements that go along with any product we manufacture. So we, at the end of our production run, we will bundle products into various packages of steel. So they might be 6 metre lengths at maybe 2 tonne bundles. What's important is all of the traceability data. So we need to know, just like when you're making, for example, a loaf of bread, you need to know all of the ingredients that went into the dough that were involved in making that loaf of bread. For us, that's really the heat of steel. A heat of steel is typically 84 to 86 tonnes of steel. And what we need to be able to do is clearly link all of the inputs that went into making that steel, the chemistry, when it was made, the energy consumption that went into the steel, all of the transactions. We need to tie that to the product that is actually being processed in the mill. When we process it in the mill, we actually append all of the data with the inputs that the mill then contributes. So we take a semi-finished good, a billet of steel, we transform that into a length of steel. Let's say it's 12 metre bar of steel that's in 6 metre lengths. We do that through a series of thermomechanical transformations, and there's a quench and temper process that goes with that as well. All of that is transforming a product, and we need to capture each of those those steps. We do that on the product tag, so that captures all of the information, the heat, when it was processed, and so forth. And it's appended to the bundle of steel. That's the traceability element for the construction industry. So when they're looking at specifying steel, they don't just want to know, is it a particular grade of steel? They actually want to know, where did it come from, when it was made? If there's ever an issue in construction, that's the fingerprint that allows us to go back and identify all that information. This project focused on automating that process. So traditionally that was done with a human operator, and the human operator would do that by printing a tag and manually attaching it to a bundle of steel in our finishing end. And that was done at ergonomically challenging locations in an environment with moving equipment, overhead cranes, chains moving, product moving. And it was also often done in batches. So rather than doing one bundle at a time, an operator might wait for 5 or 6 to do that in a more efficient manner. Of course, when an operator is doing that, there's the opportunity for human error. And it's not necessarily line tied. Now, when I say line tied, I'm actually talking about the transaction being linked to a event in our production process when there's a human doing that, and it's not necessarily scanned or automated. It's not line tied. There's an opportunity for an error to occur. What we wanted to do with the bundle tagging robot is actually automate that process. We wanted to take the human out of that environment from a safety perspective. We also wanted to bring a step improvement in our traceability. So what we now have is a system that is linked to our manufacturing execution system, our MES, and it will only print a tag once it knows what product is actually on the tagging bed. The robot does a lot of really interesting and really clever items. It actually scans the tag. It captures all of the data. It verifies that it aligns with what's on the bundle on the bed at the time. It then automatically goes and determines where it should ideally optimize the attachment of that tag to the bundle. It's done through a weld stud. It's welded, but it actually uses an AI algorithm to scan the surface of the bundle end and determine the optimum position. It then actually places the tag on the bed. It welds it on with a weld stud, and it does a verification loop where it actually does a check that it has been applied correctly and it's the right tag on the bundle. And that's all done automatically without the human intervention required any longer.
And as you say, this has made a step change in day-to-day worker safety on the floor, and also the element of traceability. How have your customers responded?
Look, it's an interesting question that you asked. So we've done this really to take a step improvement in our own traceability. Customers ultimately expect a product to be what the product purports to be. So all we are doing is ensuring or guaranteeing that when InfraBuild is delivering a product, there's actually a very robust and very traceable process all the way back through every step of the way that really clearly demonstrates all of the credentials that we are stating come along with our product. So we are essentially ensuring surety of supply to the customer. Part of our equation is really, the customer promise, and this is, guaranteeing that we're able to deliver on that customer promise.
And I mean, we talk a bit on other podcast episodes around the emergence of regulation within supply chains. And, as you say, your customers asking about carbon footprint, scope 3 emissions, much more traceability, making sure there's no modern slavery in the supply chain. Is this sort of technology helping you answer those questions?
It is, because it's, I went back through the, I stated it was line tied. Line tied means that each system is passing data onto the next step of the process, and it's automatically being appended to the next step. It's not waiting on intervention of an operator. So if I think about our steelmaking process, we make a heat of steel. We actually know all of the inputs. So we know the chemistry because we actually record the chemistry of the product being made. We test during the production process. We actually test the chemistry and we actually record the chemistry. We also record all of the energy inputs that go into that. And that is all, being line tied. It is all then appended to the product as it moves through the process. The automation process means that we don't have an opportunity for a human to make that error. We actually have a system that is essentially a handshake of information from one step to the other. That gives the end user tremendous confidence in our certificates that go along with the product. The product is what it purports to be. Without casting dispersions, if I brought a product in from a mill external to Australia, how do we actually know that it's using renewable energy? Just because a piece of paper says that, how do we actually trace that? What we're trying to do is provide very clear and transparent transactions to give the end user 100% confidence that when we say a product is X, it is X.
Now, this year we've been looking at the strategic examination of R&D and particularly how companies work with universities on R&D projects, and that's a little contentious. But you've been co-developing this project with Monash University in Melbourne while balancing protecting your steel industry IP. What's your playbook for collaborating with academia without giving away the secret sauce?
This project wasn't with Monash, but we do have a number of others with Monash. So I will pick up on, we have embraced partnership with academia. We leverage the talent and the knowledge of the academic sector. So Monash being a key partner, but there are others, UNSW, etc. They actually have wonderful, young, talented, unencumbered minds that really are able to unlock different ways of thinking. We're a very old, very foundational industry, and much of what we do because of it's what we've done for a long time, and it's learnt behaviour. We are very much wanting to embrace different ways of thinking. We want to bring in a challenging, mindset that really does open up different opportunities that we may not have considered. We need to be mindful, though, that a lot of what we do is very it's knowledge that we have in our business, and it's knowledge that's important to our business, and we don't necessarily want that to be shared externally. However, working with academia, it has to be a two-way street. There has to be something in it for the academic sector as well. So the approach we've taken is that we are looking at shared agreements where they're able to leverage a lot of their learnings and use that in further research, but not within our industry. So we're not asking for a blanket where they're unable to actually move ahead. They actually are able to move ahead, and we'd be quite ignorant to expect a university to want to work with us in a scenario where it's all one way. That's never going to work. But maybe if I look at it a different way, the young minds that we're working with, they're the next generation of employees for our industry. So how do we attract them to our industry? The best way to attract them to our industry is actually to partner with them and to engage with them. And I was at an industry night at Monash maybe a month and a half ago. What I'll share with you is that 3 years when I did a similar industry night, of all the students I engaged with at Monash, not a single one of them had heard of InfraBuild. I engaged with probably 70, 80 students a month or so back. Every single one of them knew who InfraBuild was. In fact, their first question was, firstly, it was a statement about the wonderful projects that their colleagues are actually working on with us. And the next question was, what does a career at InfraBuild look like? So it's really an avenue to bring the next generation of employees to our business. And again, it's a mindset change that we've had to bring to our business.
And that leads nicely into my next question, which is around that skill development, because I think these operators now become essentially robotics operators. And I think you're looking for more data scientists and business analysts. So what is working when it comes to upskilling your team or attracting the next wave of talent?
I think with all of the AI and automation projects, the key is to be very open in your communication at the very onset as to what the project is actually trying to achieve. I think you've got to take the workforce on the journey with you. You've got to demonstrate to them that technology is not necessarily here to replace humans. It's actually here to assist. In many ways, AI is here to assist us make decisions. It's not making decisions for us. So if I think about what does that mean? An example I'll use, if you go back to the 70s, spreadsheets were a new and emerging tool available to us. And there was a lot of fear that, manual calculations, people doing that would be replaced. Well, the reality is it's actually accelerating the ability to execute. You still need someone to provide an input and assess the output. And that's no different with the technologies that we're looking at. So you're quite right. We've created a demand for more data scientists. We're certainly looking at software engineers or ML DevOps. We're upskilling our workforce. We've had a number of people go through training sessions on robotics applications so that they are more familiar with the operation of our facilities. But it means that we're able to nurture and develop a new generation of skilled workers. And we need to do that by taking the workforce on the journey with us and showing them that it's not here to replace them. It's actually here to assist them and provide a more efficient and a safer work environment.
And as you say, InfraBuild is an old company. Steelmaking is a very capital-intensive business. How did you build the business case? Because winning investment for any sort of new project is always tough in that environment, particularly with AI, where so much is unknown. So how did you get the business case across the line and then also convince people that, you'd have the installation and the shutdown wouldn't disrupt everything and it was all worth it?
I'll start with the installation and shutdown. So, yes, we're a very old business. I didn't mention at the start, but our business does run 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So there is a challenge to being able to actually shut down the facility for an extended period of time for an installation. Now, a robot installation is typically, for us, it would occur at one of two times during the year where we actually have a prescribed shutdown. And typically that's over Christmas where we have a 2 or 3 week shutdown. And that shutdown, whilst, it's called a shutdown, the facility is still operating. It's just that we're going through a maintenance and a capital upgrade process. So careful planning is required to actually align it with a shutdown. We can't, if we miss the December shutdown, the next opportunity would be a mid-year shutdown or an Easter shutdown if that is actually scheduled. In many cases, it's not scheduled and it would be deferred to the next 12 months. So there's very careful planning required on when you'll actually install a piece of capital. The process to actually have capital approved is no different to any other project. it does need a business case. But the business case is not always about financial return. If I look at traceability is valuable to the business in that it's actually a differentiator between us and another mill from overseas, for example. It's about the customer promise. So what's the dollar value on your reputation if you get something wrong? What's the dollar value on safety? I don't know that you can necessarily equate dollars and cents to a safe work environment. So this is actually making a step improvement in safety. So there are many different factors that go into the approval of a capital program. In this particular instance, there wasn't a clear-cut dollar advantage to going down this path because, we're not replacing operators. We're actually repurposing operators, but we are bringing efficiency. So some of the benefits that we gained were that this particular operation was somewhat of a bottleneck to our operation. Well, it's no longer a bottleneck because the robots actually unlocked that perceived bottleneck. We've also been able to better leverage and get more productivity out of the workforce by actually deploying them to roles where they're actually able to make a more meaningful contribution than a repetitive, menial task.
Fantastic. Well, thanks very much, Shami. So lots to think about for companies thinking about how to incorporate AI that's, not just Copilot. So as I said, my name's Louise McGrath. That's the end of our episode this week. If you have any comments or questions, please email industry.policy@australianindustrygroup.com.au. Our next episode and final episode for the year will be with Ines Willox, our Chief Executive, with a review, looking at the review, what's the year behind us and also what we expect for the year ahead. So if you have any questions for Ines, now's your chance. Email industry.policy@australianindustrygroup.com.au and we'll speak again in a couple of weeks.